Hey guys, so this morning, and I wasn't aware of it because I was sleeping, of course. Nintendo dropped the trailer where they were talking about, the overall view, well, basically talking about giving an overall view, I should say, on the Switch 2, which is scheduled to come out in June. That's right, June. It's going to be coming out in June of this year, so we got a couple more months to save up for it. And basically, the information they gave is kind of very thorough in a way because basically, and I got this off The Verge. Basically, they said that the Switch 2 and everything is coming out June 5th, so a little over 3 months. But basically, it's coming out June 5th, and it's got two price points. The first price point, mainly for the base, if you will, the core unit. No game included, all that. But for the core unit, it's going to be $449.99. In other words, $450. And basically, it's going to have a 1080p screen at 120 hertz, 7.9-inch LCD screen. Let me read that. 1080p screen, or 1080p resolution, 120 hertz, 7.9-inch LCD screen. That's what it's going to have. It's going to have Joy-Con controllers with mouse-like functions. So in other words, you can now, because some of the games they're bringing in are known for mainly being like PC games or laptop games like Civilization and all that. You're going to be able to use that for Civilization, as well as you're going to be using it for some other things as well. So that's pretty cool. It's got like I said, it's going to be 1080p resolution, that being the screen, the portable screen, 120 hertz, 7.9-inch LCD screen. It's also going to have 256 gigabytes of storage, which is bigger than the current 32 gigs, and it's going to have a 4K output via the dock. So in other words, like when you connect your Switch now, like the Switch you have now is, when in portable mode, is 720p. Even when they did the OLED version, it was 720p. And when you would plug it into your TV, it would be outputted to 1080p when you would play it on the TV, or in some cases 4K if it wanted to. But not really. It'd still be 1080p, but again with a 4K they add in, a pixel points and all that. So you kind of get a 4K image, but not really. Mainly you get like a 2K image when you plug it into a 4K television. But anyway, they do say that it's going to have a 4K output. So like I said, just like with the portable screen being 720p, and then when you plug it into your TV, 1080p TV or 4K television, you get 1080p to 1440p on the screen at most. But when you have it in handheld mode, you have it at 720p. So via the dock, same way, same thing. You're going to get a 4K experience. So like if I have the Switch 2 in my room and everything, if I have it in my room, then I'm going to have an experience of basically 4K when I play the games on the television. They'll look really crisp and cool. They also say it's going to jump up from, I think, 60 frames per second to 120 frames per second. That's what they said. That's kind of cool. In fact, let me do something here for a second, guys. If you hear any bumps, that's just me going to the website. And sorry about that, but like I said, it's going to go to the website here. If you hear any, if you hear like little noises and all that, just pressing on some of the stuff. So here's the specs according to The Verge. It says basically the specs will be, they say basically that the device has like I mentioned earlier, has a 7.9-inch screen, but still 13.99 millimeter thick. So basically, it's the same size as the thickness, and everything is the same size, as the first switch. Excuse me. I'm trying to do this with the opportunity I have. My situation has been following me for a while. What? Sorry about that, but like I said, the details basically are that the device has a 7.9-inch screen, as I mentioned earlier, but the thickness, like, when you hold it in your hand as a portable device, is the same as the Switch at 13.9 mm, or 13.9 mm. The LCD screen is a 1080p resolution and supports HDR and is up to 120 frames per second refresh rate with a viable refresh rate. So it's up to 120. It's up to 120 FPS refresh, with that being the refresh rate, but it's variable as well depending on what game you're playing digitally or physically. They say the Joy Cons are bigger too, and it's hinted at they can be used similarly to a mouse. And what that means basically by being used similarly to a mouse, as I mentioned earlier, one of the games they're advertising for release on the Switch 2 is Civilization 3, and you can use the mouse to kind of play the game and do what you want to do on it, just like you would with the PC. But they do say in parentheses, they do say, though a footnote says the mouse mode will only work with compatible games, again, Civilization 3 and such. And they stay connected to the Switch via magnets. Like right now, we could just slip off the Joy-Cons and everything. And people have always said, well, it kind of wears them down and stuff. Well, this is going to make it easier and more durable, if you will, for the Switch to be, well, not the Switch, but the controllers to be utilized time after time and not fall out of your hands when you're playing it in portable mode. They said that Switch 2 tech spec sites says that the console will offer 2 to 6.5 hours of battery life, with a footnote that says, quote, "These are rough estimates. The battery life will depend on the games you play," unquote. In other words, basically saying, like, let's say you're playing Cyberpunk 2077, the Ultimate Edition. They're saying that the longer you play that, the more you play that, it's going to eat up a lot of battery life. They do say that it has, as I mentioned earlier, it has 256 gigabytes of internal storage, up from, I should say, let me read that. It says that it has a 256 gigabyte of internal storage, up from 32 gigs on the first Switch. As shown in the Switch 2's initial reveal trailer, it also has 2 USB ports for connecting accessories and for charging. So in other words, you got the bottom port, just like with the original Switch, and you got a top one that you can plug in, and all that and everything. And it does state only the USB port can be, only the bottom USB-C port can be plugged into the official dock. The top one you have to put a plug into, which I think they'll come with it. They said when using the dock, you can play games at up to 4K resolution at 60 frames. It's kind of cool. So just like I said earlier, like with the Switch now, where when you undock it and you're playing it portably, it's 720. But when you dock it and you play it on your TV, it's about 1080, or 4K wise up to 1440, which is 2K. They go on to state, and this was the one that got people talking, the new C button on the controllers can be used to activate a chat menu that lets you access controls like muting your voice during the Discord-like game chat calls. To help users better understand the features of Switch 2, Nintendo will also release a Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour paid digital game that will be available on launch day. Now, that's going to get some criticism, because one thing people will say that the PS5 has done that's good is you had that Astrobot Playroom for free. You had that for free, and it helps you understand the PS5. So obviously, this is going to get some criticism. It says the game cards from, and they do say it's going to be available on launch day. And they said also that the game cards for the Switch 2 will be red, a change from the black cards for the original Switch. It also says the system supports micro SD express cards, but original SD cards for the Switch are not compatible. So, in other words, basically, one of the things they advertised in a previous direct is the virtual stuff, the virtual games. So, the virtual e-cards and everything, or e-cards. So basically, when you do something like that, that should help you out in the long run with all the stuff you save. They do say that there's a new Pro controller too, which has new rear buttons, a headphone jack, and the C button. It says Nintendo will also let players share compatible games locally with a new feature called Game Share. It says the tech specs site also says that the system has a custom processor made by Nvidia, but doesn't provide more detail. The console also has Wi-Fi 6. They go on to say that Nintendo officially revealed the Switch in a brief video in January, or Switch 2 in a brief video in January. In the video, arguably the only spec that Nintendo stated was that the console would be backwards compatible with original Switch cards. But from the video, it was also apparent that the Switch was a bigger device with an extra port on top of the console. You could also see that it had new ways to connect the Joy-Cons. Instead of sliding on and off, they snapped to the sides. The video also showed that the controls could be slid around a surface similar to a mouse, similar to the way a mouse does, and snap into accessories. They do say in the initial Switch announcement, Nintendo also revealed that the dock had a more rounded shape than the one included with the first Switch. So that's what they say there. Those are the specs and everything. Now, continuing on, where was I? What did I leave off here? Okay, so I mentioned all the tech specs there. Alright, now, they do say they want to clear, Nintendo has also cleared up the mysteries about the System C button. Again, I mentioned that, with details about new game chat features and a camera accessory, and confirmed that the GameCube games are coming to Nintendo Switch Online, along with a dedicated controller to give them the respect they deserve. Now, here's what's interesting though. They do say GameCube's finally coming to Nintendo Switch Online, which means along with, NES, SNES, 64, Genesis, you're also going to be playing. You're now going to be also be able to play GameCube. But what they didn't specifically state, in my opinion, is will the GameCube, because it's going to be coming out on the same day as the system, or be added in on the same day as the system to the Switch Online service. But they didn't specifically state is whether or not it's going to be only if you have a Switch 2, or if it's going to be on both Switch 1 and Switch 2. They didn't state that. They just said, yeah, it's coming, but they didn't specifically say, hey, you got to have a Switch 2 to play the GameCube games, via the online service. They didn't say if it was going to be on both. So hopefully they clear that up and let us know whether or not, hey, it's only a Switch 2 thing that you're going to be, it's only a Switch 2 exclusive that you're going to have to do the online stuff with and all that to play the GameCube, or if it's both, they got to clear that up. Hopefully they will. Now, they do say that last but not least, Nintendo showed off a number of new games like a Switch 2 edition of Metro Prime 4 Beyond and the exclusive Switch 2 launch title Mario Kart World, which is basically, as some people have described it, taking inspiration from SSX, which was another racing game, open world and all that, and basically you can you can basically start a race one place and finish it in another place. So all those kind of things. There's enough videos and stuff where people are talking about this and everything. Arlo's talking about it. Clownfish Gaming's talking about it. Josh Scorcher's talking about it. Everybody that talks about games is talking about it. So if you want to check the videos out, I would suggest doing that. they'll give you more detail than I can. Excuse me. Now, like I said, we do have a release date for the system. As I mentioned earlier, it's going to be June 5th, in a little over 3 months. And the core console, like I mentioned earlier, is going to be $449.99, basically $450. Bringing a handling of games and accessories along with it. It will be available for pre-order in the U.S. from select retailers starting on April 9th as both a standalone console and a limited edition bundle with Mario Kart World. Now, the Mario Kart World bundle is going to cost you $50 more. So if you just get the core base, of course, that's $450. Round that out there. And with the Mario Kart World game, it's going to be $499.99, basically $500. Now they go over everything else that I've mentioned and everything as well. When it comes to the C button, because everything for the Switch 2, all the controllers, from the Pro controller to Joy-Cons to the GameCube exclusive controller as well for it, are all going to have the C button and everything, which can be used for in-game chat features, screen sharing, and other actions, which is kind of cool if you like that. Now, of course, like I said, they talked about the GameCube games coming to Nintendo Switch Online. Again, don't know whether or not it's just going to be for Nintendo Switch 2, or you have to have that system to play the GameCube games, or it's going to be both. Hopefully we'll find out. But they did describe that the GameCube games are coming to Nintendo Switch Online, which they shortened to NSO, subscription classic game library feature, which the company is now shortening to Nintendo Classics. It lets you play games from the NES, SNES, and Sega Genesis. Like the Game Boy and N64 game collections, you'll need the NSO expansion pack for GameCube games. The existing catalog of playable classic game library games is far from complete, but together and combined with DLC for contemporary Switch games, they make the expansion pack well worth it. And again, they haven't come out and said whether or not it's going to be for the Switch 2 only, or if you're going to be able to do both. Just looking over stuff, making sure I don't miss anything. Okay. It does say the Switch onboard microphone picks up. Okay, so it does say, for when playing with your pals and everything, game chat looks like it could be a lot of fun. You can join a shared call with your buddies and play games together, or hang out and share screens of the games you're playing separately. The Switch 2's onboard microphone picks up your voice for the voice chat, and you can use the Switch 2 camera accessory, which is designed to sit next to your TV or you're playing on the couch to host video chats. Nintendo says other compatible USB-C cameras will work too. So in other words, if you have a camera that has USB-C to it and everything, if you basically, they're saying, hey, if you don't want to go out and buy the Switch camera and you have one that's compatible, that's going to work. That's going to work fine with it. Fine for you. Basically, and honestly, I don't know if that's going to apply to me, because honestly, I have the bigger USBs, so I might have to go out and get one of those eventually if that happens. But anyway, but the good thing is they do say, hey, if you have an alternative USB-C camera webcam, that'll work too. So that's good to hear that you don't necessarily need to get the Nintendo Switch one, but you may have to if you don't have compatible camera with a USB-C. Now, one of the other talking points as well that I think is going to get a lot of criticism is the price points of the games. Basically, it says at least 2 Nintendo Switch games are going to be more expensive than most games on the first Switch. It said many Switch games, I should say, cost $59.99, $60. Nintendo revealed today that Switch's Mario Kart World on June 5th will cost $79.99, $80 if you will, while Donkey Kong Bonanza, releasing a little over a month later, will cost $70. They do state that these aren't Nintendo's first titles to exceed a $60 price. The honor goes to The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which launched at $69.99. When that price was announced, Nintendo told Game Informer that we determined the suggested retail price for any Nintendo product on a case-by-case basis. In other words, basically, in my opinion, it's just their way of saying, hey, we put a lot of money into this. A lot of funds went into this, for the specs, the details, and all that. So we want to make that money back. And the best way to do it is to charge the amount or charge a certain amount for the game to make up for it. In other words, it's like when a movie, it costs a lot to be, it costs a lot to, studios are going to put in theaters, you know, they're going to want to hope they make the money back so they can justify, hey, here's more that we're going to bring to it, and stuff like that. All right, so basically, over that, let's see. It says the Joy-Cons. They say the new Joy-Cons look a lot like the old Joy-Cons, but are about half an inch longer and black, with color accents on the connection rails and under the analog sticks, blue on the left and pinkish on the right. Nintendo says they're more comfortable. Nintendo says they're more comfortable too, and that they have the same general button layout as the originals, but with a new C button, which, as we mentioned, on the right, Joy-Con that's used for Discord-like game chat feature. Now lets you talk to your friends while using a microphone embedded in the top of the Switch 2 that includes screen share functionality and the ability to start streaming with a Nintendo Switch camera accessory Nintendo is selling separately. Let's see. Okay. It does. They said that Nintendo didn't spend too much on the Switch UI during the Direct today, but the company has given people a pretty good look at the console's new home screen and all that. And it said, basically reading down on this, it says, presumably you'll be also able to see a darker UI option the way you can on Nintendo's last console. There's no word on whether the Switch 2's UI will gain customization features like what we've seen on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X/S. But Nintendo went into great detail about the console specs, its new features, and how you'll be able to pre-order the system ahead of its June release. Now, of course, they do go over a lot of games that are coming, like Mario Kart World. Mario Kart World, which is going to be a Switch 2 exclusive. They also talk about enhanced editions of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and new chapters to Toby Fox's Deltarune, which they say is a solid lineup. They do state that the Switch 2 Mario Kart World bundle won't be around forever. They said interest is picking up on the Switch 2 Mario Kart World together for $500. Might want to hurry when the bundle is available for pre-order on April 9th, because Nintendo says the console game combo will have a limited production to fall of 2025, available while supplies last. In other words, they're saying, hey, you got to at least September, October, maybe November to get the bundle, and then it's gone. They do talk about game card features or game key cards. It says some Switch games will be on. Okay, it says Nintendo subscribes Switch 2 game key cards. Some Switch 2 games will be on game key cards, which don't come with an actual game on it. Instead, the game key card is your key to downloading the full game to your system via the internet. If it's downloaded, you can play the game by inserting the game key card into your system and starting up like a standard physical game card, which is, I guess, unique in its own right. And they do kind of show off what it's like, and they do describe it. Sounds like the system might replace the physical Switch games that come with a code instead of. Okay, they do say. This being The Verge, they do say it sounds like the system might replace the physical Switch games that come with a code inside instead of an actual cartridge. They do go on to talk about the camera. The camera basically it says Nintendo is launching a special camera accessory for the Switch 2 that will let you host video chats with your Switch friends, simply called the Nintendo Switch 2 camera. It's a camera on a stand designed to sit near you as you play. It will cost $49.99, and launches on June 5th, the same day as the Switch 2. So in other words, basically, if you, let's say, get just you just get the 450 core set of, for the Switch 2, and then you get the camera, you're looking at 500 plus tax and all that there. But if you go with the bundle, which is 500, and then this, you're looking at 550 with tax and all that. So, pretty pricey on that day. You can use the new camera with Game Chat, Nintendo's new in-game chat system that lets you connect with friends online by pressing the new C button. It says during the Switch 2 Direct, Nintendo shows off a couple of different ways to use the camera. Your face can appear as an overlay on top of the game you're playing, and it can show a video feed only. One thing that some people did describe and all that, in fact, Metal Jesus Rock, when he talked about it, Metal Jesus Rock said that the one thing he didn't like when it came to the Switch 2 camera is basically when you're playing the game and you have yourself on there, your face, your visual self looks very stilted, like it's very rough. Like, when you do a live stream and all that, it kind of goes, there are times that based on your connection, whether it's good or bad, or maybe your computer's updating or something, all of a sudden you're going like stilted, like you're going into stop motion, like over here and over here. Basically, that's what he described it as, and hopefully that's something they'll fix and put updates and patches and all that. So basically, they do state if you want to pre-order a Switch directly from Nintendo, you'll need to make sure you have at least 50 hours of gameplay on the original Switch as of April 2nd, 2025. Nintendo revealed the anti-scalper mechanism on its pre-order registration page, where it says it will prioritize registrations who meet the gameplay requirements and have purchased at least a 12-month Switch Online membership. For Nintendo to track your gameplay hours, you'll need to have opted in to share gameplay data with Nintendo. You can check if you opted in by logging into your Nintendo account and checking your privacy settings. So basically what they're saying is that if you want to avoid being, left out in the cold and don't want to be, suckered in, let me get some Coca-Cola here for a second. Get some Coca-Cola. But they're saying if you don't want to be suckered in and all that, by scalpers who have been notoriously known for buying up all the systems on day one and pre-ordering them all just so they can make money off them. Basically, they're saying the best way you can, make sure you get, right in line, you're insured to do this and that. You're insured to do this and that, without any issue. That basically you need to be playing 50, I think what they said, like 50 hours. Let me go back and read that. You need to be playing at least about, it looks like, what did it say? You need to be playing about, but I think they said 50 hours, and have a 12-month subscription. Well, for me, I think I've done the 50 hours already. That's long overdue. But also, the fact that not only did I do the 50 hours, but I've had subscriptions. Now, a 12-month one, that might be the one I have to get into next if I want to do a pre-order with them down the line. Okay, so they do talk about the Pro Controller as well. They said Nintendo has taken the wraps off a Pro Controller to go along with the newly detailed Switch 2. They say it's been upgraded with two new GL and GR buttons on the rear grips that can be used to remap other controllers. A C button, of course, to enable voice control and video chat. A 3.5 millimeter audio jack along the bottom that can be used to connect a headset and microphone. And it said, according to Switch 2 producer Koichi Kawamoto, I'm sorry if I butchered that name. They said the two rear paddle buttons, which are also appearing on the updated Joy-Con 2 charging grip accessory, can be mapped to any button inputs, and those settings are saved for each player in-game. Karimoto also explained that the grips have been reshaped, inspired by the GameCube controller, and the control sticks have been improved. They have been improved to feel smoother and quieter, though he didn't go so far as to confirm it. Okay, to confirm if that he didn't go as far as to confirm if that means Hall effect tech or something. They do say that the boxes will be red as well as the carts as well. The Nintendo Switch Nintendo Switch 2 boxes will be red too. They said that the new system carts and game boxes will be bright red. Okay, let me reread that. They said Nintendo Switch 2 boxes will be red too. The new system carts and game boxes will be a bright Nintendo red, and they're not sure about the big banner on the top though. They're not too sure about that. Now they do talk about games. They do talk about Mario Kart World, which is going to have open world mode called Free Roam, and everything is similar to Horizon 5. There's also a knockout tour mode that lets you do a cross-country cannonball run style checkpoint race and everything. It can do up to 24 drivers per race and everything, so that's kind of cool. And they do plan to share more about it in Nintendo Direct schedule for April 17th. And it's going to be an exclusive, and it's going to be a price tag of $79.99 at launch. But if you get the bundle, it'll be, if you get the $500 bundle, you'll get that along with the Switch. They do talk about Donkey Kong Bonanza. It's coming in July. It'll be July 17th, a week before our birthday. And it's going to be very low in price. It's going to actually be about $70. I think $70 they're saying for it. $70, maybe cheaper. That's coming. That might even also be a Switch version as well. But yeah, right now it's just Switch 2. But Donkey Kong Bonanza is coming. That's going to be basically it's going to basically price wise going to be $70 at the cheapest. And the design apparently of Donkey Kong in the game is taken from his Super Mario Brothers movie design as well. They're also doing a sequel to Kirby Air Riders, which is a racing game. It was the first racing game was on the GameCube, and now you're going to get the sequel on the Switch 2, maybe the Switch as well, but mostly these three that I'm talking about are Switch 2 exclusive as of right now, at least the last two I talked about, this one and Donkey Kong. They talk about Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment hitting the Switch 2 in the winter, which obviously makes it both a Switch 2 and maybe a Switch version, but we'll see. But that's coming. They talk about Cyberpunk 2077 is coming to Switch 2 Ultimate Edition. It says the more than 4-year-old game showed up in a blink and you'll miss it moment during today's Nintendo Direct sizzle reel. It's not clear when it will release. I would assume maybe by the holiday. They say Hollow Knight Silk Song is launching in 2025. That's another game that's coming to Nintendo Switch 2, and it's going to also probably be on the Switch. It says Silk Song was first announced for Windows, Mac Linux, and Nintendo Switch in 2019. It was originally intended to be DLC for Hollow Knight, but according to developers, Team Cherry, it clearly became too large and too unique to stay a DLC as initially planned. The game will take place in a new kingdom with new moves and new weapons at your disposal, as well as new enemies to take on. Deltarune is heading to Nintendo Switch as well, Nintendo Switch 2 as well, and so are new chapters. They say the game comes from Undertale character Toby Fox the game which comes from Undertale. Okay, let me read that. It says the game which comes from Undertale creator Toby Fox will be available on the Switch 2 when it launches on June 5th. It says that it not only includes chapter 1 and 2, but also brand new chapters 3 and 4. So yeah, that's about it. But yeah, so far I like what they're doing here with the Switch. So far I kind of like what's been detailed and everything. Again, they need to give clarification to the GameCube situation. In my opinion, they need to give clarification to the GameCube situation and all that, and whether or not it's only going to be, a Nintendo Switch Online NSO exclusive for the Switch 2, and you need the Switch 2 to play it, or if it's also going to be part of the Switch as well, so you don't have to just rely on the Switch 2? That's what I want to know and everything as well, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. But yeah, so far so good. I like the idea that they're basically telling you this is an upgrade. It's an upgrade, essentially. That basically when you're playing the Nintendo Switch, when you're playing it, via the dock onto your TV, that it goes from 720 to 1080 or 1440, depending on the kind of television you have or monitor you have. So I like the fact that now bumping it up, they're bumping it up to where it's basically going to do the same thing, but instead, when you have it connected to a 4K television, it's going to bump it up to 4K. You know, but the refresh rate for the frames per second is basically defaulted according to what I'm seeing at 120, but it's going to vary depending, I think, on the game. Now, the one thing they didn't mention here, the Verge didn't mention here, is there's also a cooling fan. That's right, they do have a cooling fan that's going to be in the back of the Switch. It's going to be in the back of the Switch, and basically that's to cool off, certain games and everything. It's going to be to cool off certain games because, like I said, the battery life is all depending at 6.5 hours, or depending on the kind of game you're playing. But basically, they're going to have a cooling fan in the back, so that along with and it's going to be the dock they're going to have it installed in. I don't think it's going to be the portable portion. It's not going to be the screen itself, but it's mostly the dock. It sounds like, according to what Metal Jesus Rock said, because he was talking about it. But basically, it's going to be um, in the dock, and it's going to cool the game. It's going to cool the system and everything, depending on the game you're playing. Because there's going to be games on here, like the Legend of Zelda games, the Cyberpunk game, Civilization 3, that you're going to be putting a lot of hours in, and they're saying, hey, we know it's going to be, you're going to be playing a lot on this. You're going to put a lot of hours. So guess what? We're going to put a fan in here to cool off the system, to cool it off so that it doesn't overheat. So that's kind of cool that they're doing that, and hopefully that doesn't, cause any issues either down the line. But overall, I like I like what they brought to the table here, and hopefully, pray to God, this isn't, as some people put it, another Wii U situation where it looked like the Wii U was going to be the next big step up for Nintendo after the Wii, and then it turned out to be a disaster, and it only was able to salvage itself towards its end. So let's hope it's not that. Upcoming, let's hope it's not that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And if financially I can do it, I will be getting a Switch 2. I have the Switch in the guest room right now, but I can guarantee you if I get a Switch 2, that's going to be in my room only. That's going to be my system only, you know. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this. Comment down below, like the video, ring the bell for notification. Are you looking forward to the Switch 2? What games are you looking forward to playing with it? Do you agree with me that they need to kind of clear up the whole GameCube situation when it comes to Nintendo Switch Online? Let me know that. And really, just give me your thoughts overall on how you feel about the Switch 2 coming, and if you're going to get it and everything. Are you going to get the core base, or are you just going to get the bundle? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the camera situation and the option of, hey, if you don't want the Nintendo Switch camera, you can use your own USB-C camera to kind of work in that same motif, that same area. But let me know what your thoughts are. Comment down below, like the video, and until then, guys, I am out. Take care.